Welcome everybody, it's Unstoppable Stelezzi and I got another casted match for you today in Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition. We're looking at another Breaking Me Chinese gameplay, this time against Carboni's British. Before we get started into the match, we will look at the map real quick and figure out how that might affect the strategies of the players here. So on this map we have this river. It goes straight dab through the middle here, and we have a few crossings. You got a crossing here and you got a crossing over here. Now this does give you a bit of predictability and understanding where your enemies are going to be coming from. Also, there's a trade route, 2 trading posts on this side and 2 trading posts on this side. Now, for both civilizations, they do like their trading posts, namely the Chinese, who love to start with one as part of their build order, and of course the British with their Greenwich time card, where sometimes they'll actually use that trading post wagon to grab one of these. So it's going to be a good map for both civs, depending on how you look at it. Let's give it a go, though, and see how we end up. Alright, so Breaking Me's Chinese over here. We've seen it for a few times now. Basically, Breaking Me likes to make some unorthodox choices in regards to his consulate as well as his wonders. Yeah, he doesn't play by the old school start with the summer palace sort of thing usually. And instead of going with the Russians, he does go with the French, claiming that the acquisition of resource crates through the French consulate is much better than what the Russians offer you. So, yeah, it's totally a different take than what we're used to, right? Yeah, I mean, I think I've tried it a couple of times myself when I was first doing Definitive Edition, but it just didn't stick with me. After seeing Breaking Me do it a number of times now, I think honestly it's a pretty good setup, you know. Constantly being fed by food, wood, and coin in the early game, as long as you have the export to purchase those crates. It's pretty nice. It's pretty good. As for the British over here, British is always a tricky civ to deal with in a 1 versus 1, namely because they have an unending number of villagers that you have to deal with, right? Every time one of these manor houses goes up, you got another settler to deal with, right? So even if you do get a little bit of a raid in there, guaranteed the British are going to have more villagers than you usually, so it's kind of tricky to deal with, you know what I mean? Also, the military is pretty solid all around, too. I mean, they got Royal Guard Hussars, Royal Guard Muskets. Longbows are pretty insane, usually. Sometimes we even see that Gentleman of the Pike thing pop up in Age 4. A lot of flexible stuff overall, I would say. Wow, look at this treasure over here. Lucky this Explorer had a bit more HP on him, otherwise this Disciple could have knocked him out and allowed the Chinese one to get that. Very lucky for him over there. Now, looking at these decks, this is the British deck. I would say this is probably a standard 1 versus 1 British deck. Focus on necessary wood and coin crates, your musket and your longbow shipments, musket upgrades, your basic cavalry ones. Usually you get the HP and the combat together because those are the most important ones. Yeoman is always a must. 3 rockets is always nice if you pop into Age 4 quickly. Gentleman of the Pike. So it really has all the hallmarkers of a standard British 1v1 deck, I would say. Also, don't forget about the 2 Falcons. That's a really good shipment usually. On the other side, the Breaking Me build. He has the T export card as his first shipment. It's a really good shipment because it actually enables this whole sort of French consulate gameplay that you see right here. Essentially, it gives you a bit of export once the shipment arrives, and in the future you gain an export trickle, which means you're able to get some really nice crate technologies like this from the French consulate very quickly. To boot, the French consulate does enable your villagers to gather slightly faster as well, by about, I believe, like 5%, so it's pretty solid in that aspect of your economy too. And for the starting wonder here, he goes for the Porcelain Tower instead of the Summer Palace. This gives him a lot more economic flexibility than going with the Summer Palace, which is more military oriented. Right, so very different than what we usually see with the Chinese. Yeah, most definitely. Much more of a focus on resource output than necessarily getting a couple of free armies here and there to add to our stack, pretty much. Also got some llamas from the map here too, so is eating pretty nicely over here as well once these things fatten up. Quite nice. That's why the village is such a great house in general. Not only does it house so many population, but it also allows you to fatten your animals at too, instead of having to shell out extra wood to build a livestock pen. Quite convenient, actually. And what are the British doing exactly? It looks like the British are in Age 2 now. Looks like they picked the standard Governor General with a bit of coin crates and an outpost wagon. Let's see where that outpost goes. So the outpost is going to go up here as part of the forward attack. This is the pretty standard way for the British to rush. They'll use their outpost from the Governor General to set the forward base, and they'll put the barracks right next to it. This way, not only can you get a nice line of infantry to attack your opponent with, but you got a nice little tower to defend the barracks as well, and make it harder for a counteroffensive towards that forward base. Yeah, it'll take much more troops from the Chinese to actually get both this down and this down, too. And it's also pretty normal as well for a British villager building a forward base to put up a manor or two around it as well. This way they have more villagers to work with in that general area, without having to take villas from all the way down here, move them up here, and end up losing villager seconds in the process. It's a nice way to make sure that your villagers are, well, working, bringing you resources, because that's really important to keep up with your production as British. So you can keep a healthy amount of musketeers constantly flowing in, like you can see right here. Back with Breaking Me, now he is actually shipping the 1 flamethrower, 1 castle rickshaw shipment. It's a nice defensive shipment that gives you a nice tower, namely the castle, around your base to prop around here, and a flamethrower too, so if you're dealing with a stack of, I don't know, musketeers, longbows, any sort of infantry, you'll be able to cook them quite good, actually. Definitely better than medium rare, I would say. Most definitely. So, looks like the castle's going up over here. Nice defensive spot protecting the consulate, protecting the village, and is a sort of a frontal defense for the town center behind it. Second wonder is the Confucian Academy. Now things are starting to look a bit more standard, since the Confucian Academy gives you nice free flying crow artillery, really nice heavy artillery for dealing with tight formations of troops. Where's your rush? His rush is all the way down here. I think he kind of forgot where your town center was. Oh, never mind. Here's the hussars. Here they are. Sadly, this flamethrower is probably not going to last through this. Sad to see such a good unit go to waste, but it's alright, I guess. Probably Breaking Me has some other stuff cooking up for us now. Hussars are going to try to take out that Shaolin Master there. Maybe harass this Wonder Construction. Hopefully he knows to get his villa out there in time. Nope. Unfortunately, that villager is lost. Now we can garrison. Very good. Got the free Arquebusiers from the Confucian Academy, age 3 age up. That's always nice. A bit of ranged troops to make the Hussars go away. Also some sentries. The Hussars really don't like those since they're polearms. You gotta make sure you micro these Arquebusiers properly though, so you can target mostly the muskets and let the sentries do their job here. Unfortunately, he's gonna need a bit more anti-cav right now, since these Hussars are pretty beefy with their HP. Right, it's going to take lots and lots of time for Arquebusiers alone to deal with such a huge stack of Hussars. Now there's about 9 of them now. And a mass of musketeers coming from this side too, swooping in to lead a big siege into his base. Continuing to produce Hussars and musketeers, so dedicating to more of an age 2 push. China will need to make some pretty drastic decisions to defend against this. Looks like he did make a Kejik and Step Rider banner army from the castle. Also shipped in the Changdao swordsman. Really good against Hussars in general. Now we'll be shipping in about 10 Arquebusiers. That should clean up the muskets. Singled out a Hussar over here, which will still beat this cav, but left it pretty battered, I would say. Changdaos are mostly trying to avoid the ranged attack of these muskets. They mostly have to be there to protect against Hussars when they come back in again. right now has about 4 hussars. Something that these Qingdaos should be able to deal with in such a small number. Still has a Kijik as well to boot, so I think for right now, China has survived this push pretty well, you know. Sure, they lost a Vil or two and lost the flamethrower, but it's not the worst thing. Not the end of the world, I would say. You definitely got the advantage now of being able to send your H3 shipments in. Your bigger crates, your more advanced military. Kind of the benefits of going with an FF, you know. While your opponent's behind in H2, you can get some really beefy H3 units to definitely overwhelm them, I would say. And that's what these Qingdaos and Arquebusiers will do quite well at. Kind of need some more population at this point, so it looks like he is looking to research some of the technologies at the villages to make each village provide a bit more housing space. We'll need another village, though, to cap it off. Finally can afford to train some more units in, it looks like. Which units will it be? Who knows? Does actually have the Beiyang army here. Now, if he wants to continue making those sort of Mongolian banner armies from the castle, he can actually get this shipment over here to not only ship a number of those units, the Kijik and the Stepwire, but research their veteran upgrade for free. So, if his main emphasis is going to be on the Mongolian army, he may as well send that at some point once he gets the necessary food. So, you know, he can sort of stick to that cavalry. However, it looks like he does have to deal with a major push over here, longbowmen, muskets, and hussars. And namely, he needs to make sure that he keeps these Qingdaos away from these longbows, since they'll be a very big danger to him there. The musket mass itself looks pretty daunting, as well as this big mass of hussars. Thankfully, though, you're China, so these villages come in handy to garrison your villagers in a pinch. It's always very nice to have that option. If you're the British or any of the European civs, sadly you can't hide inside your house. For some reason they lock the doors when the raid comes, you know. Even if you knock on the door and say, let me in, the hussar's going to get me with the saber. Nope, I'm not opening the door. But China, they'll let you in. They're very collectivist in that way. Always helping your neighbor out, and these longbowmen definitely need to be helped out, and it looks like they are. Hussars trying to defend them, as well as the muskets. China really looking for any sort of angle to try to pick apart this army, coming in with the Arquebusiers and sniping off an infantry here and there. Now he gets the Manchu shipment. The Manchu shipment is the mercenary cav archers that China can get through the home city. These are very powerful against cav. Very powerful against cav. Not only because they have multipliers against cav with their range attack, but unlike more gunpowder based like cav, like the dragoons, horse archers like the Manchu actually have high amounts of hand armor, which means if the hussars get any wise idea to attack them with their swords, they're not doing that much damage to them. They got a lot of longevity in that sense. Also, chasing down these longbows with the disciples. Oh wow, look at that RNG there. It gets a free disciple from the kill there. Yeah. It's it's ability that not everybody knows about, because there's a slight chance when Disciples kills a unit that it'll actually convert it to another Disciple, and therefore spread themselves like a disease almost onto the enemy. And it's pretty nice in that sense. Hussars completely isolated now. They can be chased down by the Manchu safely at this point. However, China's going to have to make some sort of a siege on the forward base now, and how do you do that? Well, you use the Flying Crow you just got for free from the Confucian Academy. Is going to back it up with meteor hammers and switching to the British allies. This is a typical move of any sort of Asian civ that has access to the British, because it essentially allows you to add HP onto your military units as long as you're allies with the British, pretty much. Yeah, and also their Redcoat battalions are very nice as well, especially for China, who can't actually train their own musketeer units at all. So every time you get about 400 export, about halfway there now, get a batch of a few Redcoats yourself. So it's almost like British fighting British at that point, right? Yeah. Now, at this point, it does look like China's score is starting to ride up on the British, even though the British clearly have a gigantic Vil advantage at this point, being the Brits, right? How many Vils are they on, by the way? So they are on about 54 Vils, quite insane at this point of the match. China, though, is on about 24, not that much. What they're going to rely on, though, is military strength. And sadly, they just lost their flying crow from those pesky hussars there, so they're going to have to siege it down the old school way. Thankfully, not too much HP on the left, so that'll be a pretty good pinch there. Taking out the manor house for some XP. It's always a bit of a trade-off when you siege these manor houses, because if you siege a manor house, then the British can rebuild it and get another free village out of it. So you always have to balance that aspect out. Thankfully, the siege bounty on those manor houses is pretty high, about 83. So you get pretty well rewarded for sieging them, at least on the XP side, to get your next shipment out. So in that instance, I feel like Breaking Me decide, you know what, I'm going to siege that manor house down, get the XP reward, and get another shipment. Especially since he is so behind on villager numbers. Now that Beiyang army is going to come in, and now we're going to see all these Kijiks and step riders get their veteran upgrade for free now. This is key because of the delicate situation that Breaking Me is in here. He hasn't even been able to build a war academy yet. He's mostly had to shell all of his wood into villages to keep his population up. So he's not going to be able to access that nifty veteran upgrade so easily, so he needs this card here to actually get those veteran upgrades for his H3 combat. Most important aspect of his gameplay now is going to be his longevity of his military. He needs those veteran upgrades for mainly more hit points, so they can take a bit more damage, and also a bit more give a bit more damage too through their attacks. So yeah. Because if you lose too much of his army, it's a guaranteed loss against British, since they have the better eco pretty much, and it will ride up on you. Going for a very spicy option this game, getting some Harkwood Biziers. These are very powerful. These are a very powerful range heavy cavalry that deals a lot of high damage splash up close and personal. And that'll be really good for dealing with masses of things like musketeers pretty much, yeah. Where's British at this point? So, how many vills are they on? They are on about 59, is it? Looks like he needs to get some hunts there more further out at this point, since he did sort of eat through all of his hunts in his primary area. The problem is once he has to move out onto this hunt and the one over here, which he is starting to, he's got a real chance of getting raided by step riders, since that seems to be the emphasis of China's army at this point. And it doesn't look like these hussars will be of much use anymore to protect him, because the veteran Kijiks will be a really good counter to him with their anti-cab multipliers. It looks like China has effectively recovered their side of the map 100% now. No more presence of the British left. And now another village is going up from Breaking Me. We see China moving forward with the Flying Crow, likely trying to siege whatever they can find, like this outpost. China will have to make sure they use this huge swarm, which China is well known for, to protect that artillery. That's one of the wonderful things about the Chinese, is you can never say that they'll ever leave their artillery out and hanging too much, because they have a pretty easy ability overall to mass lots and lots of troops, both because of the way they train their troops with the bear armies, and also because China's allowed so much population in general to stack that sort of thing. So it's quite nice in that sense. Looks like we got the step riders right here mixed in with the meteor hammers, trying to fight through this line of muskets and hussars with the help of arrow support from the cav archers. British is trying to age up though, because they sort of realize at this point they're going to need some veteran upgrades to keep up with all this cav stuff, and ideally get the falconets out to blast away some of these infantry. And he just folds it right there. Absurd. Well, yeah, China can be absurd sometimes, and that's why I like the Chinese civ so much. You know, It was one of the first civs I did in ranked when I got to 5th edition. I would say they're really good at just getting together a huge swarm and then being able to pile on things like flamethrowers and handmores to just go in and do lots and lots of damage every time. And certainly what Breaking Me does here is definitely quite nice as well, adding to the potential build ores you can do with the Chinese. In terms of post-game, clearly British had way more resources, but they just could not apply them because of the strength of those Chinese troops. Not only was he swarming his Mongolian armies, but he was throwing in mercenaries. The Manchu played the Harquabiziers. So he knew to mix things together pretty well there. In terms of military, surprise, surprise, even though he is China and he's known for having big swarms as the Chinese, British actually had a bigger army and did really squat. I mean, it's China with the smaller army that actually fought the overwhelming force pretty easily there, so that was quite impressive. Quite impressive. Hopefully we get some more Breaking Me China videos in the future, since he seems to be pretty solid with the Civ, and maybe we'll learn some of his other build ores for other Civs too. Most definitely. Thank you for watching. See you on the next casted game I do. Sign off now from this one.